Hi everyone, it's Erkan Ali here with Shulagh Jacobs, and it's our first show of 2021. And what a year 2020 was. So we did a final show, didn't we, Shulagh, to sum up 2020. And one of the things we talked about is being vigilant and being on guard and keeping our wits about us in terms of what's coming. I mean, it's January the 5th today, if I'm right. I'm a bit disorientated, and things have changed dramatically in Britain. Is there anything you'd like to say about that before we move on to what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, obviously last night, just 4 days into 2021, we got the new lockdown announcement, which was kind of on the cards. And so no surprise. And then this morning I woke up to find that the Talk Radio YouTube channel was actually banned.
Yeah, I saw you announce that. Sorry guys, I'm just going to grab some water. I saw you announce that, but I was like, I thought, what? Really?
Yeah, national radio station. And I checked. I went on YouTube and checked it, and it's for real.
Wow.
It's not something I picked up on Twitter.
That's good news, isn't it?
Well, Talk Radio were one of the few mainstream stations that had actually been questioning the government's narrative. So for them to actually be banned, I think is quite...
It kind of shows what's going on. I think also Talk Radio, obviously people call in and say what they want to say, don't they?
Mm.
So I don't listen to it personally, so I have no idea, but I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of presenters on there, Julia Hartley-Brewer and one or two others, who were really grilling some of the MPs on their statistics and stuff like that. And they were one of the only voices within the mainstream who were starting to make people kind of sit up and listen to what was really going on.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So
may well be a wake-up call for quite a few people.
I think that will be. I think, the more draconian it gets, I guess the more people are going to go, whoa, hold on a minute, TalkSport YouTube channel's been taken down. And obviously a lot of people engage with Talk Radio. So just to viewers know, I'm not in the UK at the moment. I'm not going to disclose my location at present, but I will reveal all soon. Okay. So we wanted to make today about if you're kind of just getting over the fence, like you're starting to think, hold on a minute, I've been in the mainstream narrative for most of my life. I've been watching BBC and Sky, and I watch, all the entertainment that comes through those agencies, and I'm starting to notice this, that things don't stack up, or I've got questions, and I'm starting to be, people are sharing things that seem really far-fetched or challenging to accept. And you're looking over that fence thinking, I want to kind of explore and start looking at information that's not readily available within the mainstream. Where do I start? And I know what I've noticed in, through social media and Facebook and people, there's this kind of polarizing or this kind of binary where you're either in the mainstream narrative and you kind of, wearing your mask and you're being a good boy or girl and you're following the rules and you're waiting for the vaccine and all those things, and probably in fear of the virus. And then there's those who are starting to say, hold on a minute, their businesses are getting are looking like they're going to be permanently damaged, probably with very low probability of recovery. We're furloughing people. Some of this stuff doesn't stack up. There doesn't seem to be any more people dying, yet everyone's dying from COVID. No one's dying from all the other things. I'm just saying there may be, and I don't want to use the kind of readily used terms like, conspiracy theorist or getting woke. I want to kind of stay away from that. And for me personally, all my life I've asked questions. I think it's the most natural, most innate aspect of human being is to ask questions and seek, and ye shall find. Look for the answers and be sovereign with that. Look for the answers that make sense to you. And I grew up in a mixed culture, Turkish, Cypriot, Turkish stroke, English, British. And, I was told different things in just those two cultures all the time. And I remember going to Turkish school and they'd tell me one thing, Atatürk, and you're a Muslim and you're this. And I go to English school and it'll be Christianity and King Henry VIII. And I'm like, I don't really buy either of those. And always had this kind of deep passion to just work things out for myself and trust myself to work it out. So I think that's what we want to encourage in today's show, is if you're going to take that route, that you're going to be sovereign and you're going to look for the answers for yourself, and you're going to go and you want to move away from the mainstream and start exploring, where do you go, where do you start? So that's what we wanted to set the show up today. So on that note, Shulagh, because your own journey has been in terms of stepping up your desire and ability to ask questions and seek the answers, has kind of really stepped up in the last, I'd say, year and a bit now, hasn't it? Been,
Yeah.
especially since the COVID, since March, I suppose, really ramping up. So how did that journey start? Where were the first sources? I wouldn't say agencies, but people or programs or sources of, or you could call them your proxy sense makers, whatever you want to call them. But where did you start to go to and go, yeah, that make they're presenting some information that really is interesting and seems to be the case?
I guess my very, very first foray into an alternative view of things was back when I was working in the fitness industry, and I was starting to look at sites like Mercola.com, some of those holistic practitioners, Paul Check, and people who were starting to put different views out into the fitness profession regarding how things like fat and cholesterol had been demonized, and the high carb, high sugar and low fat weight loss foods were being kind of driven through the mainstream. So that was the first step for me. And I realized at that point that there was, should we say, a bit of a conspiracy within the kind of pharmaceutical companies and like the food producers to keep people kind of sick and unhealthy. But then fast forwarding from there and coming back up to sort of present day, last March, that was when I kind of realized that things were badly, badly wrong. And the first people I started looking at, I think I was listening to radio stations like 21st Century Wire, Patrick Henningsen, UK Column, all of who you introduced me to, Mark Scott, Windows on the World, and UK Column, of course. But along with that, there are a lot of websites that were starting to spring up around that time. Things like Lockdown Skeptics, run by Toby Young, again, kind of more mainstream journalist. They were starting to put out a lot of information that was unraveling some of the statistical side of things and questioning what was happening. And Off Guardian, that was the other one as well. So I think like what I realized straight off the bat was that you have to look at a large variety of different sources to try and get a feel for the reality that's actually happening. You can't just rely on one source.
For sure. Okay, so let's break it down a bit. Okay, so I think this is where I wanted to be a really practical value for any of our viewers. So let's take UK Column. I think UK Column's a really good place to start. I think it's a great place to start. And by the way, I don't have any, I don't have a dog in the race. I don't earn any money from anyone, or neither of us are going to benefit personally out of, I wouldn't say recommending, I'd say sharing the sources that we've been leaning into. So just make that clear from the off. Now with UK Column, I have met the people that run UK Column. I met Brian, I've met Mike, I've had countless conversations with Patrick, and I've seen them speak at the Alternative View events. So for me, it wasn't just like finding them online and then experience them that way. I've met them as individual people. I've seen them milling around crowds. I've spoken to them personally, and you kind of get a feel for people. You kind of get a feel for what they're about, what's important for them. And I think it's really important to start to see the human being rather than just a presenter. It's very easy just to see a presenter and just consume the information, as opposed to think, that's a person, a man or a woman, that's taken time and effort, and what they're gaining, what they're really gaining. I mean, maybe that's a conversation for later. But what I find with UK Column is they're really good at analysing and breaking down what's being said in the mainstream, and then breaking it down and showing information that kind of, literally most of the time, completely goes against what the mainstream's saying. And that's got more and more. I mean, the juxta between mainstream and what you hear on what they're reporting on, and then grounding it in some kind of statistical or reality or credible information, is getting further and further and further and further away apart. In fact, UK Column yesterday was interesting because they were talking about this new strain and this new virus, and the pace that it's changing, and they're breaking down the documentation the government are presenting to make the case for the lockdown, and it's just, there's nothing there. There's nothing there that justifies any lockdowns anyway. But this current lockdown is completely unjustified. So if you're thinking about a news type format, I think the UK Column is fantastic. A lot of statistics, and they've got a track record of years and years of work, so you can go back and see where they stood on different subjects, and a lot of it is analysing and reporting and comment. They are giving some of the stuff. I'm just waiting for Brian Gerrish just to explode.
Yeah.
And then they also have Alex Thompson and David Scott and David Steele. Is it David Steele?
Ellis.
Sorry, David Ellis. And they bring all unique perspectives into the mix as well. So yeah, I'd say UK Column. What else do you like about UK Column that makes it interesting for you?
I like the fact that they always quote their sources, because I mean that's incredibly important for any journalist, and so you can go away independently and check their facts and figures. I like the fact that, as you say, there are a mix of personalities, and you can follow them on Twitter, you can follow them on Facebook, and through that you can get a sense of who they are and what they stand for as well.
And also they've got you can make a donation or contribution to the show, and it gives you some membership I don't know the word privileges, but membership access, I think is a better term. So there's a lot of extra areas, and Patrick Henderson again is part of that, and he's also running 21st Century Wire. I think I was going to say is I like it when they bring in the other guys we mentioned, and that they bring in different perspectives, especially around military side of things, psychological warfare. Some very, very interesting people with a lot of experience that are bringing their knowledge to the fore. So I think these are all good. I mean, it's a news format show that's on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for an hour. So it's just the 3 hours, and you can watch it anytime you want, really, because it goes out live. But then that opens up a lot of other doors. And the thing that I find astonishing when I'm listening to UK Column, they'll mention certain subject matters that are never even talked about in the mainstream, like military union and what's happening with the UK Army and loads of information like that you just go, this has never even been talked about on the telly, on the mainstream. So what I think what UK Column does for me is makes me aware of a lot of subjects that are being dealt with within the government, within NGOs, within big corporates. So they talk about the IMF, they talk about the World Economic Forum, they talk about all sorts of things. And these things, if you're just watching the mainstream, you don't know that these things are even happening, and yet they're happening, and their implications or the ramifications of those things are tremendous, and they're not even talked about in the mainstream. So I think that's a really good place to start UK Column. Yeah,
they're extra time programs which kind of follow on their sort of private page after the main program. Excellent if you like a little bit more of a deep dive, and they tend to bring up a few extra tidbits that they don't mention in the main news.
Okay, so that's UK Column.
That's really worth a look.
Who else would we like to talk about next? I'm just touching base with these. We're not going to go into great detail, because obviously if you're watching this and and you have further curiosity, go look at it yourself, work it out for yourself. As we always say, don't listen to me or Shulagh or even UK Column or anyone. Work it out for yourself. What you think's happening. So who else is a good go-to source for you, or what else?
I think in terms of the sheer variety of guests he has on, Richie Allen.
Now I want to give a little
because
bit of sorry, I think you broke up. I want to just give a bit of I just want to warn people about Richie. Not warn him like he's doing anything bad. I think Richie is fantastic. I have complete respect for him. I love him to bits. I think he's really been an influence for me anyway. But Richie is his own man. It's his own show. And there's a lot of Richie's personality. And it may take you a little while just to get over that bit. And I don't mean that in any disrespect to Richie. I just think if he's the kind of personality you kind of gravitate to or attracted to, great. But I don't think he's for everyone as a personality. He's got an Irish accent. He talks fast. He uses some very fruitful language, and you may find that a bit of a challenge to get through that, to get where he's coming from. But the important thing is also to realise that Richie is interviewing people, and he's interviewing people from amazing. I mean, the variety is incredible. I find that's what I find really interesting about Richie. He'll have anyone on the show and talk to them with respect. He'll ask them questions. Quite a lot of the time, he agrees with them because he does, and then he will challenge them for the sake of the audience as well. And he's had Jordan Maxwell on the show. He's had Dr. Vernon Coleman on regularly recently, and he's had just the most amazing people. Really incredible people that have given me a lot of access to further research. So I'll hear them on Richie's show, and then I'll go off and either buy their book or go off and follow them personally. So it's a great place to find other reporters, other people who are active and sharing information. Anything else what would you say about Richie?
I just wanted to mention that he also has people on there that he doesn't agree with. And it's not because he wants to shame or humiliate them or denigrate them in any way, but purely to gain that extra spectrum of information. Give them that platform, listen to what they have to say, because it's only by looking at all sides of the argument that you can really gain a clear understanding of what that argument even is.
Yeah, even if you're hearing a case that doesn't maybe align with how you see it, it may get you to see how you see what you already think is the case in a different way. Like kind of explains, that's why. So it's not a bad thing by any means. So I think Richie, as probably, like I said, I don't feel like I'm listening to Richie. I'm listening to Richie talking to a lot of very interesting people, and I happen to like Richie.
Yeah.
So the Richie Allen show. So we mentioned Richie Allen show, UK Column. So they're two British. If you like, Richie's based in Manchester, and he's Irish. And UK Column, I think they're based in Portsmouth. And apart from Patrick, they're all pretty much English or possibly Scottish. I think with a couple, one of them. And Alex Thompson is English, but he's based in, I think, Holland or somewhere. So if you started off with those two places,
you've frozen.
Oh, okay. Now we're okay now.
Yeah, you're back.
So if you started off with Richie Allen and UK Column, then I don't think they particularly like each other, by the way, from what I can tell. So that's great. That's nothing. No problem with that. So it's good to get within the, if you like, the alternative media and the non-mainstream media information suppliers. There's conflict. There's different views. I think there's different personalities. So that's fine. I think the important thing is these are two very good portals to further explore and look at information that's being presented. Okay. Who else would you like to mention?
Yeah, so I was talking about James Dillinghall, who seems to be enjoying his venture down the rabbit hole and turning under various rocks And it's interesting because he's been getting quite a lot of flack from his more mainstream peers in the sort of journalistic industry. But he's had some really interesting guests on his podcast. And people like Vanessa Beeley, Patrick Wood, the technocracy guy, again, all of whom are very credible with putting their sources out there and all the relevant links. So if you are just kind of dipping your toe in the water with all of this stuff, his shows are actually really good, and there's a lot of humour as well. It's quite fun to watch.
Yeah, sometimes when you're dealing with these kind of challenging subjects and the wider ramifications of it, it can get quite, I suppose, dark and not so much fun. The other person I'd like to mention is James Corbett, the Corbett Report.
Definitely.
I think he's incredible. I think James Corbett is probably as clear and as clarity and as, you know, down the line, and, you know, amazingly well produced pieces that he does as well. He's done a lot of focusing on different things as well, especially Bill Gates. He's done a lot on Bill Gates. So people say to me, "Oh, Bill Gates is a nice guy." I say, "Okay, great. Okay, fine. That's what you've been shown. Let's show you something else." So, and I think he's done about 3 or 4 focuses just on Bill Gates. Who is he? Where did he come from? What's his motivations? So James Corbett's great. I think he, you know what? I think all of these people, whereas I think with the mainstream characters, I don't experience it. You kind of see the human being behind it, not just a presenter or professional doing their job. You know, you can see Brian Gerrish's anger and frustration, and Mike Robinson, and you know, you can definitely hear it in Richie. But when you watch the mainstream news, it's just like it's a robot talking to you. Yes, and 300 people today died in blah blah blah. It's been a tragedy. Bang, next subject. And you kind of think, wow. You know, there's what I find when I get off mainstream is there's more human being there rather than just the presenter in front of in a studio with lights and cameras and hundreds of people. With these non-mainstream sources, they're pretty much individuals doing their an amazing job in terms of depth of understanding, in terms of research, in terms of their sources, in terms of their treatment of the subjects. And when you hear people say, "Oh, conspiratorial," I say, well, there are conspiracies. They're just part of that. But then there's information. Let the information speaks for itself. You know, if you make it about the information and about the implications of that, and the if you like, the ramifications or the ripples of that information, that's where you've got to use your imagination to project, well, what's that going to mean for me, for my family, for my business, for my job, for my life. I think that's where I want to encourage, in a really compassionate way, more people to kind of go off mainstream and look, you know, and I think we can get them to look at places that they can be more open to just listening, then ultimately they've got to make their own minds up. No one can do it for you. You know?
Yeah, I think it's good to learn how to distinguish between sort of real news, real facts and figures, and the propaganda. I think a lot of the empathy that's kind of put into the mainstream is a kind of manufactured empathy, in that events are presented in a certain way to make you feel and think certain things.
When you've been off the mainstream, when you go back and look at the mainstream, it's so transparent, it's so obvious. But I really have compassion for those people if that's all they've known. You've got to readjust your ear, and you have to readjust your way of, you know, considering information to one of, oh, that's what's happening, and acceptance to actually starting to question. But what I find is people question the non-mainstream, but they don't really question the mainstream. You know, they don't really question it as in, I've been told to wear a mask. Why the hell do I have to wear a mask? And really work out whether you should be wearing a mask or not. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to contribute today, is baby steps. Take your time with it. Look at the information, consider it, and you're going to find that you're going to see things in a different way. And it'll give you an idea. You know, at first it'll probably be quite harrowing, I imagine. When you start to see what's at play, but you adjust and you recalibrate.
Yeah, I was traumatized for about 2 weeks when I first started looking at this stuff, and I mean really traumatized. But then I did take it all on board in as short a space of time as I possibly can. But I did that.
You compressed it in, and then obviously the impact of that. So I want to talk about that as well. I mentioned it before we started the show. Is if the information is getting quite confronting and it's upsetting and it's unsettling and it's scary, is take a deep breath, breathe, and great place to be about all of this is action overcomes fear. Is get into some action around an area that's important to you. So if you think there's going to be food shortages, what's your strategy for that? If you think there's going to be power cuts, what's your strategy for that? If your business might go bust or your job goes, what's your strategy? So start to look at these things head on, diagnose the situations, and if you diagnose well, then you can then put a plan together. Now, the other thing I want to say about, I've been a coach for quite a long time, and I'm not an over fan of goal setting as such, but make plans, and then they're your default. You vary away to or from the plan, and you adjust from the point of reference. So plans are good, and they very rarely go the way you plan. I mean, that's what I found in my life is you make a plan, but have some contingency, have some strategies in place, and then get into action around it. Even if it's make a list, right? Electricity. If the power goes, what do I do? If I've got to have a vaccine, I don't want to have one. Whatever. As you start to open up the labyrinth of all this information, you're going to be aware of things that you probably weren't aware of, that you didn't know you needed a strategy for. So don't get overwhelmed with having a strategy for everything, but actually start to make some strategies for some of it, and then get into action. Because if you spend too long in strategy, you don't ever do anything. So get into action. And then the second thing I'd recommend is, after you've done a plan and started to get into action, is to get your attention on other people. Focus on the people around you, be of value. Now, I'm not saying go full right brain and just go out there and focus on everybody else, but have a good left brain balance of, strategy, planning, forecasting what you think's coming, what are the actions I need to take, get into action, and also care for and consider the people around you and your environment. So that's my recommendation. And I think it doesn't take away the sting. You graze your knee as a kid, it hurts, and you just got to get over that bit. But then, get the witch hazel on it, and get your lollipop and crack on. I don't know if that metaphor works, but it's like, it's not, nothing's going to take away the pain of this.
No.
If you're not feeling any pain, and consider you're probably not really that well informed, or you're anesthetized with too much alcohol or food or Netflix, maybe. But it's going to be upsetting. And on that point is, connect with people around you that are either already in that conversation or are joining that conversation, so you can have those conversations with others. So that's really all I've got for this show. That's what I wanted to say. Anything else you want to say to sum up?
Yeah, I think one of the key strategies you need is, one, to look after your own mental and emotional state. As we've said, some of this stuff is challenging, and the events are changing pretty fast at the moment. Trying to keep pace with that in itself is challenging. There are going to be times when you feel odds, and we've all experienced that. So know what you need personally to kind of get yourself balanced and centered again, whether it's taking a walk or getting back to nature or doing something creative. Just know what you need to get yourself back to where you need to be. Then you can start taking on the events around you.
Brilliant. I think that's great. But listen, we appreciate you watching the show. We're going to do more on this. I think Shulagh will list the people and the resources we've mentioned at the bottom of this video. If you've got any questions, or share it, like it.
The links in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put the links down below. So I want to say thank you for joining us today on the 5th of Jan 2021. Let's see how it unfolds. Are we cutting?
Thank you for watching, and we'll
Take care, bye. Well, I'll stop it there.
see you next time.